Whether for a big game or just a big celebration, these ham and cheese sliders with onion jam are one of my favorites. They have a mustard butter that goes over the top. They're baked in the oven. You know that these are nostalgic, but the flavors turned up, they're more unique, and you're gonna definitely wanna eat on these, so let's make them. If you're not used to the concept of a funeral sandwich, it sounds really odd. But these sandwiches, with specifically these slider buns, were used often at funerals, especially at church funerals, things that where you wanted to make a big amount of something to serve a lot of people that was also good. And over time, I think they just kept being called funeral sandwiches. So growing up, we knew them as funeral sandwiches, which is really odd because we never had them at a funeral. Instead, we just had them for, I don't know, like game days or when people were coming over and it was kind of an appetizer slash food. So these are gonna be a riff on that or a take on that. And I have another version on my website too that encompasses a fig jam and it's really delicious. These we're gonna make a quick onion jam. And what I wanna do is, I'm just quickly slicing up some onion and I break them down into a dice because I want them to cook down pretty quickly. We're gonna do a quick onion jam. It's not gonna be caramelized onions over time. Instead, what we're doing is a jam that's just going to be cooked onions that are beginning to brown, and then we're gonna add some really good ingredients that makes it literally a jam. So you get that sweet, savory component before we build and assemble the whole sandwich that then gets baked in the oven, melty cheese, all the goodness. So what I'm gonna do is take my onion here that I've been dicing up. It looks like a lot, but remember, onion really cooks down. And what we have here is some hot oil and a big skillet, and I'm just gonna add this in. And anytime you're cooking, but especially with onions, add the salt. Obviously it's gonna season them, but it's also gonna pull out those extra moisture molecules so they break down quicker. After a little bit, you can see these start to brown. They start to get that crispiness. This is when I put in a rosemary sprig. This is just for further flavoring. And then we're gonna add in some brown sugar. Now remember, this is a jam, so it was a lot of onion, but what this brown sugar is gonna do is help caramelize and create a jam. So here, just for a few minutes, we're gonna cook this to start melting that sugar into the jam. Since it's a small amount, we're not making a jam to can or preserve like I often do. You can see, you just wanna wait till it gets dark, kind of thick and syrupy. See how that sugar's just caramelizing? That's exactly what you want. Smells amazing. Those onions really have cooked down. We're gonna add some balsamic. So that vinegar has the acidic part that kind of wakes everything up, but it also has the sweetness. So you're furthering that sweetness and kind of balancing it out with a little bit of that acidic tanginess, which is what you want. It's a beautiful combination here. I mean, this is so good. You're probably gonna wanna make this, keep a jar in your fridge, use it on different sandwiches. Think of this on a grilled cheese. This is kind of what we're doing, but not really. I'm gonna let this sit here now, and we can talk about some butter I have over here melting. Now, these sandwiches traditionally always have a melted butter mixture on top, and it can range for different things depending on what you're making. So what I have here going is a few different things. So we're gonna do some chive and some parsley. We're gonna kind of make a melted cowboy butter, and if you're like, I don't know what a cowboy butter is, just think of it as a butter that has full-on flavor. Now, usually a cowboy butter is going to be, it's gonna be a compound butter. You're gonna use a harder butter that's softened at room temperature, but then just mix everything in, then put it in the fridge and take off pieces to use in different things. Here, we're doing it a little bit different. So we have a garlic clove that I've minced. We're gonna put that right into that butter. Now, if you wanna use salted butter has great flavor. Just don't add more salt to the mixture otherwise. You just have to decide what you wanna use. We're gonna put in a little bit of that thyme, parsley, and chive right into it, which already just smells so good. Then we have a few other things here. So I'm gonna kind of bring them over so I can talk about them, because it's all kind of for varying reasons, and I need just a little something to push this in with. So we have some Dijon mustard. Again, the mustard with this sandwich works so well. Instead of putting it on the sandwich, we're gonna put it in that butter. So we're gonna put it right down in there, and it's gonna just work together with that melted butter. We're gonna put in some black pepper, just some right in there. A little bit of chipotle powder. Now that has the smoky spiciness to it. Now if you don't want spice, add some smoked paprika. That's gonna give you a smokiness without any spice. Then some Worcestershire. Now this is going to be that sauce that has all those flavors in it. We're gonna put it right in, and already it smells amazing. And what we're gonna do is just stir this up. The butter doesn't fully emulsify with that Dijon perfectly, but that's okay. All the flavor's gonna be in there, and when we brush it on, it will work. So what we're gonna do is set it there, let that sit. So now we can talk about these beautiful sweet buns. You know, they're easy to find in a grocery store. They're really delicious. You have to buy some to make sure, depending on what size your pan is, just to fit in perfectly. Now, I like to take them apart, as in each one individually, but to cut them a lot of times, it can be easier because they're not cut for you. It can be easier just to do it while they're together if you want to not make as much work. So it just depends what works best for you and what you're comfortable with. But you can see I'm just gonna go in and just cut. You need a sharp knife. Usually these are so soft interior that you don't even need a serrated knife, which is really nice. So I'm just going through, boom, cutting them. That's all it takes. And then I do have that one row left. But now what I like to do is just let them fall apart where the lines are, because then when you put them in here, they're easier to me. Instead of having to try to cut them apart later when you're serving them, if you just do this now, look how easy that is. Like that's to me why you want to do this, is like just do this so later on when people want to grab them, they can. Once they're all done, you can just take the tops off. You can keep them in the same spot if you want, because sometimes their sizing is exactly for what shape they kind of bake them in that pan you buy them in. So here we have all the bottom. Now what we're gonna do is just take this butter mixture and do one brush on the bottom quickly. So this goes on the top too, which is more traditional, but I think putting a little bit on the bottom with that mustard, make sure just to get the flavor all around. And look how beautiful it is too. Now, usually these would be made ahead of time. You could even put them in the fridge if you wanted to for a little bit and then bake them a little later. That's why it's great for a game day. You can just kind of make it work for you with what your schedule is gonna be like. So after that first initial layer is on, we're gonna take that little rosemary stem out of there. So just remove that, it did its flavor job. And we're gonna start putting this jam on each individual bun, and then slightly, you can really spread it a little bit, but I just wanna make sure every single person gets some of that wonderful jam that we took a little bit of time to make. You spread that jam evenly out, and then you just go to the ham. So I'm using a honey ham, and I'm putting it into quarters so each person gets a nice hefty piece. And that's the simple part. You just wanna put one on each one. After all the ham, you just wanna put on the cheese. So I always shred my own. And I'm doing a nice sharp cheddar. I think that's what's really good with this. And I'm shredding it because look how easily it just goes over everything evenly. After all that cheese, you just wanna put those tops back on there. See, this is what makes it fun. It's a really good, delicious, it's indulgent too, let's be honest. But you know what, for a big game or for just a fun appetizer day, this is what it's all about. So once all those are placed back on, obviously the cheese is gonna melt into them. We're going to take that butter mixture now, and this is usually the more traditional thing we're gonna do. And you're just gonna brush it over the top. And this has obviously that Dijon mustard with it. And look how the color of those herbs and that garlic just really play with that. And what this does is it melts more in the oven, it crisps them up, it drips down over them. This is exactly the best part. And this is the most traditional part of a funeral sandwich, is that melted butter mixture on top. It really does just kind of send it over the edge and make it kind of mouth-wateringly delicious. So I'm making sure I get all the sides brushed with it. We're gonna pop these right into the oven, let them melt and crisp all the way through, and we're ready to go. When they come out of the oven, they're hot, they're piping. Now, depending on the type of cheese you use, if you want to use a harder, more aged, flavorful cheese, obviously those melt differently than a softer cheese. Mozzarella melts the easiest, and then you can go on up from that. I used it in between with a slightly hard aged cheddar. But what we're gonna pull out here is a beautiful sandwich. Now see, since we had them cut, they pull out so easily, but you get that onion jam on the bottom, you get that ham, the cheese is melting to not even open up all the way if you see that on top. It's clinging onto the ham. You can serve these up as is because they're just super good right from the oven. You know what's so good? It's the sweet onion jam placed with that honey ham, and then the cheese that's melting into it, that mustardy butter we put on top. That's a perfect match. I think anytime you can hit those components of sweet with a little bit of bright acidic flavor and put it together with some melting cheese, these are a perfect game day treat. You're gonna love them, your friends are gonna love them, and more so they're a riff on a classic. So if you happen to those nostalgic sandwiches, some people even maybe call them tailgate sandwiches, these are gonna be that idea and then just turned up a notch with all the different flavors. So what do I hope you do? I hope you make these. I hope you have people over. If nothing else, if it's not for a big game, have it for a big party. Have people over. Food brings people together for a reason. Share this video around so other people can see how easy it really is to make them. Check my website, wyseguide.com, for this recipe and all my others because it's full of new classics just like this.